Today's discussion is about Module 2 Dimensions of Human Development. Lesson 2 Psychoanalytic Approach to Mental Health and Psychological Well-Being. Psychological well-being and mental health are usually conceptualized as some combination of positive affective states such as happiness and functioning with optimal effectiveness in individual and social life. In this lesson, we will look into mental health and psychological well-being in the light of psychoanalytic therapy based on Sigmund Freud's theory. Here are the most essential learning competencies for this lesson. 1. Discuss understanding of mental health and psychological well-being to identify ways to cope with stress during adolescence in the context of psychoanalysis. 2. Identify causes and effects of stress in one's life in the context of psychoanalytic therapy. 3. Demonstrate personal ways to cope with stress and maintain mental health. Let these objectives be achieved as we discuss the lesson. As we go along the discussion, answer the following questions to strengthen your understanding of the topic. 1. What is mental health? Psychological well-being? Psychoanalysis? 2. What are the concepts of psychoanalysis on the human mind, personality components, personality adjustment, and defense mechanisms? 3. How does psychoanalytic therapy look into mental concerns, for example stress, anxiety, and mental health in the light of the human mind, personality adjustment, and defense mechanisms? Psychoanalytic therapy is a type of talk therapy based on Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories. The method investigates how your subconscious mind influences your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It specifically investigates how your past experiences, often from childhood, may be influencing your current experiences and actions. One of the foundational principles of psychoanalytic therapy is its concept of the human mind. According to Freud, a person's mind operates in three states: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. Freud's model, the iceberg metaphor of the mind, places the conscious at the iceberg's tip. Our conscious mind stores everything we are aware of. In our everyday life, we are only aware of a very small part of what makes up our personality. Most of what we are hidden and out of reach. Right below the surface is the preconscious. The preconscious is made up of things we could be aware of if we made the effort. It consists of everything we can recover from our memories. Beneath lies the unconscious, which occupies the largest portion of the iceberg. The unconscious stores everything we can never be aware of. It is composed of our hidden memories, emotions, instincts, and a variety of fears. Freud believed that most of what influences us is our unconscious. Freud believed that the unconscious has a significant impact on an individual's mental and psychological well-being. The goal of psychoanalysis therapy is to make the unconscious conscious by releasing repressed emotions and experiences. Psychoanalysis is a treatment method that is commonly used to treat depression and anxiety disorders. A person can only be helped if they have a cathartic, for example healing experience, and personality that interact to form its substance. These are the id, the ego, and the superego. These Freudian personality types form the foundation of human thoughts and emotions, emerging from the mind through psychoanalytic therapy and drawing on the person's expression of repressed past experiences. The id is the part of the human mind that contains all of the human mind's psychic energy. It forms the personality's main component, and it resides in the human mind since birth. The id is completely unconscious. It works on the pleasure principle because its main goal is to survive, and it encompasses both primitive and instinctive behaviors. An infant and its refusal to quiet until its needs are met, particularly hunger or thirst, is a solid example of the id. The ego is derived from the id. As the toddler turns to a preschooler and as he/she relates more with the environment, the ego slowly begins to emerge, providing the mind's ability to cope with reality. The operation of the ego is based on the reality principle, which attempts to quench the desires in realistic ways by weighing the pros and cons of impulses before deciding whether to satisfy or discard them. The ego also has defense mechanisms, which are its ways to protect the mind from anxiety. When a person is sick and in the hospital, the ego may manifest itself. The patient may want to go home, believing that nothing is wrong, so the ego decides that the patient should stay in the hospital to recover rather than leaving and prolonging the illness. The superego emerges near the end of the preschool years. The superego embodies one person's moral aspect. This develops from what the significant others, for example parents, relatives, etc., impart to be good or moral. The application of the principles of the interactions of the personality components can be very useful in mental health and psychological well-being. This can be done by achieving personality adjustment. Personality components are important in shaping an individual's personality. A well-adjusted individual, according to Freud, has a strong ego but can help satisfy the needs of the id without going against the superego while maintaining the person's sense of what is logical, practical, and real. In cases when the id overpowers the ego, the person becomes too impulsive and pleasure-seeking behavior takes place. On the other hand, when the superego overpowers the ego, the person becomes so harsh and judgmental to himself or herself and others' actions. Based on psychoanalytic therapy, the body has its natural way to protect itself from negative psychological situations, for example stress, anxiety, etc. When anxiety, stress strike, the mind's first reaction is to seek rational ways to escape the situation by increasing problem-solving efforts, and a variety of defense mechanisms may be activated. These are strategies developed by the ego to help it deal with the id and the superego. Defense mechanisms frequently appear unconsciously and have the tendency to distort or falsify reality. When reality is distorted, there is a change in perception that allows for a reduction in anxiety, resulting in a reduction in tension. Sigmund Freud identified a number of ego defenses throughout his work, but his daughter, Anna Freud, developed and expanded on them. The defense mechanisms are as follows: 1. Denial is believing that what is true is actually false. 2. Displacement is taking out impulses on a less threatening target. 3. Intellectualization is avoiding unacceptable emotions by focusing on the intellectual aspects. 4. Projection is attributing uncomfortable feelings to others. 5. Rationalization is creating false but believable justifications. 6. Reaction formation is taking the opposite belief because the true belief causes anxiety. 7. Regression is going back to a previous stage of development. 8. Repression is pushing uncomfortable thoughts out of conscious awareness. 9. Undoing is trying to cancel out or remove an unhealthy, destructive or otherwise threatening thought or action by engaging in contrary behavior. 10. Sublimation is redirecting wrong urges into socially acceptable actions. Over the last few decades, significant research has been conducted to validate the benefits of psychoanalytic therapy. The therapist provides an empathic and non-judgmental environment in which the client can feel safe in disclosing feelings or actions that have resulted in stress and difficulties in their life. In most cases, simply discussing these issues in the context of a therapeutic relationship can be therapeutic. Furthermore, it has been demonstrated that this type of self-examination can result in long-term emotional growth.